The James Webb Space Telescope, often called JWST, has been one of the most exciting scientific tools ever created by humanity. And recently, scientists have announced something that has sparked the imagination of people all around the world, the possibility that, through this telescope, we may have found a planet that could support life, a place far away from Earth where conditions might allow living things to exist. And this is not just a random rock floating in space, it is a world orbiting its own. STAR and JWST's powerful instruments, which can detect light in infrared and analyze the tiniest details in the atmosphere of distant planets, have given us data that shows signs of something unusual, perhaps even promising. And while scientists are being very careful not to jump to conclusions, the excitement is impossible to hide because finding life beyond Earth has been one of the biggest dreams of humanity for centuries. The idea that we are not alone in the universe has inspired countless books, movies, and theories, and now, for the first time, we might be looking at real evidence that points us in that direction. The planet in question orbits within what scientists call the habitable zone of its star, meaning it is not too close to burn up from the star's heat and not too far to be frozen solid. Instead, it sits in a sweet spot where temperatures could allow liquid water to exist on its surface. And as we know from Earth, water is one of the most important ingredients for life, and what makes this even more exciting is that JWST's advanced spectrographs have detected possible chemical signatures in the planet's atmosphere, hints of molecules like methane, carbon dioxide, and even a strange balance of gases that, if confirmed, might be linked to biological processes. Because on Earth, certain combinations of gases are created by living things, and if something similar is happening there, it could mean that life is either active right now or has been in the past. And of course, there could also be non-biological explanations, like geological or chemical processes that mimic the signs of life, but the mere fact that we can now detect and study these details from so far away is a huge step forward for science. To understand how big of a deal this is, we have to remember that JWST can look at planets hundreds of light years away and still pick up faint light that has traveled across the galaxy, passing through the atmosphere of these planets before reaching the telescope's mirrors, and by splitting that light into its different wavelengths, scientists can read it like a code, figuring out what chemicals are present and in what amounts. So when the data came back from this particular planet, there was a noticeable buzz in the astronomy community because the readings weren't just ordinary. They showed patterns that are rare and worth investigating further. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating, because finding a planet in the habitable zone with the right atmospheric hints does not just tell us about that single world. It opens up the possibility that planets like it might be common in our galaxy, and if that is the case, then the odds of life existing somewhere out there increase dramatically. And think about it. The universe is unimaginably huge, with billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, and many of those stars have planets. So even if only a small fraction have the right conditions, that still means there could be millions of worlds where life might take hold. And the James Webb Telescope has given us a powerful tool to find them. Unlike earlier telescopes, which could only detect a planet's size, orbit, and maybe its surface temperature, JWST goes further by studying atmospheres and weather patterns, and in this case, the planet's atmosphere seems to have clouds, seasonal changes, and possibly even a stable climate, all of which are good signs for habitability. But before anyone imagines aliens waving at us from the other side, scientists stress that we are still in the very early stages of research. It will take repeated observations, more data, and perhaps even future missions to get a clearer picture. But even so, this discovery has already made a big impact because It shows that our technology has reached a point where we can seriously search for life outside Earth, something that not long ago was purely science fiction. And for young people watching this news, it could mean that in their lifetime, they might witness the first confirmed discovery of life beyond our planet, and that would be one of the most important moments in human history, changing how we see ourselves and our place in the cosmos, because knowing that life exists elsewhere would mean we are part of a much larger interconnected story of the universe, a story that goes beyond Earth and maybe even beyond our imagination. So as JWST continues to scan the skies, we can expect more planets like this to be found, some closer, some farther, but each one bringing us closer to answering the age-old question, are we alone? And with each new discovery, that answer feels less and less like a lonely yes, and more like an exciting maybe not, and perhaps one day, thanks to telescopes like James Webb, we will not only find a planet that could support life, but actually detect life itself, whether in the form of tiny microbes, strange plants, or even intelligent civilizations that, like us, look up at their night sky and wonder if they are alone, unaware that somewhere, light years away, we are, wondering the same thing. And as the echoes of those whispered vows dissolved into the night air, the weight of centuries seemed to press down heavier upon the silent valley, as though time itself feared to disturb the delicate balance of what had been hidden for so long. And in that stillness, the faint glimmer of an ancient seal carved into the stones at the edge of the forgotten temple caught the eye of the lone wanderer, who had come this far without knowing whether his journey was led by fate or folly. Yet something within him knew this was the threshold between the world he knew and the one buried before memory learned to speak, a place where the boundaries between reality and myth had long ago dissolved and left only fragments of truth scattered, like shards of broken glass across the ages, each one reflecting a different sliver of the same great secret. And as his hand reached out to brush away the moss and dust, he felt the unmistakable warmth of something alive pulsing beneath the cold stone, as though the seal itself had been waiting for the touch of a soul willing to bear the burden of knowing. And in that moment, the sky above began to shift with an otherworldly hue, the stars rearranging themselves into patterns unrecorded in any chart, their light bending and shimmering as if carrying messages from a realm beyond sight. And deep within the earth, a low, resonant hum began to swell, not with menace but with an ancient invitation summoning him inward, into the labyrinth of histories erased from the tongues of men, into corridors where the air was thick with the scent of forgotten incense and the faintest traces of voices speaking in languages no scholar had ever decoded. And as he stepped across the threshold, the walls around him seemed to ripple like the surface of water, revealing scenes from eras no calendar could contain, vast cities built of crystal and fire, oceans that glowed from within, beings neither human nor beast but something more complete, each image flickering for only a breath before vanishing into the next, until at last he came upon a chamber vast enough to hold the memory of 1,000 worlds. At its center, a single pedestal bearing an object wrapped in layers of faded silk that disintegrated at the faintest touch, revealing not gold or jewel but a fragment of parchment so thin it seemed spun from light, its script flowing like rivers in a language that felt both alien and intimately known. And as his eyes traced the first line, he felt the cold certainty that this was not a relic of the past, but a message for a future that had not yet arrived, a warning and a promise written before the first dawn broke over the earth. And though he could not yet grasp its full meaning, he knew with every beat of his heart that to carry it forward would be to change the fate of all that lived. And with that understanding came the first shadow of danger, for even in the silence of that place, he could sense that something, or someone, had been waiting for exactly this moment, and it had just awakened.